So we're kicking off a series called Growth Spurt. If you're wondering, have no clue who that is, we just searched the internet for time lapse. Somebody's like, who was that? We don't know. But it was pretty cool just to document it. There were several others of faces and kind of things like that. And if you're about to have a baby, you should document it, and we'll use it, 15, 20 years from now for the next Growth Spurt series. I said in All in the Hall, our prayer time for the volunteers and staff and the team that gets ready for all of us, how different this Sunday was from 15 years ago. I mentioned that Jim Bowen, Becky Bowen were there. Evan was there and has been here from the start. We're grateful for him, our most faithful, probably our best member. Ty, you and Kim, close tie in my book. Just kidding. Kim's best. You're second, Evan. You'll always be second. I know. I just didn't want him to get too high. But I was been praying about, this middle of the year, kind of March, like where should we go in the fall? And God gave us this concept of growth spurt. And when you think of a growth spurt, you think of human development and physical growth. You think of like a kid getting bigger and bigger, like we could see in the picture there. And I don't know about you, but I was of the age where my grandfather would take the door jamb and mark on the door jamb your height and the date, and you could just see how much you grew. For me, it was a cool thing because I was a pretty active grower. I was pretty good at that physical growth. I'm not saying mentally or emotionally I was like killing it, but I was born 10-pound baby. I was a pretty big-headed, big kid, kind of big for my age. I was young in sports, but grew into sports. I grew a lot in 8th grade. I was a late bloomer kind of a thing, and that was hard. I grew 3 inches as an 18-year-old, almost 19-year-old in college. Weird kind of a deal. I just shot up. And so went from 6 foot to 6'3" there, and then stopped and have just concentrated on the girth. After the height was, okay, I got that, let's go this way. I'm just kidding, but I'm not really that kidding. But the point is that in a growth spurt, things have to be present. There's certain things in our plates and ligaments, in our hormones. There's certain things that have to be cued and set into motion, and those are hardwired in our DNA. And girls stop growing around 13 to 16, guys stop growing around 16 to 18, and that's kind of programmed in is how you grow and how much you grow in the first year to the second year, or in your toddler years or elementary years. And so there's a lot of studies on that, and you guys can get after that. I just know for me, it was good to be a little taller. I got called husky. That wasn't a great part of growth, but I just remember I was excited to grow. Like I liked getting taller. I liked it until you couldn't afford to get pants and keep up with it. Then you had floods. Remember floods? If you're my age, floods are when your pants were just way too short, but you just had to stick with them, and you just were stuck with the tough skins for 4th grade. That's what you had, so just short ones. But anyway, spiritually, I don't think I grew much until I was probably 18. Maybe a little bit at church camp. Maybe a little bit. Started going to church some my sophomore year. But things really changed for me when I was 18. I was worried of how my life was raveling apart, and I called my youth pastor and lamented, and he said, Joel, until Jesus means everything, he won't mean anything. And I thought, well, Jesus has meant something. I believed in a Jesus back then that did things back in the Bible times, but it didn't impact my life, my language, my choices, my thoughts, my actions, my behavior. It was just a back then Jesus, historical Jesus. And so I said, well, I called it the great experiment. I said, I'm going to give my life to Jesus. I'm going to obey Jesus. I'm going to read the Bible. I'm going to follow what it says. Oh, they get baptized, I'll get baptized. Oh, they get jobs, I'll get a job. Oh, they don't use the F word, I won't use the F word. I just kind of went through those lists of what I was supposed to do and how I was supposed to do it. Not perfectly, but passionately for sure. Super passionately. I remember going off to college, just so excited to take this new walk into this new time. And maybe that's why God let me grow physically, to remind me that I was really about growing spiritually. And I grew a lot, started working for a church in 87. I've worked for a church ever since in some capacity. Kim and I started Bara on September 13th, 2009. But it went way back before that. It was 2001, probably 2000 actually, the summer when God said, you're going to plant a church. And we were like, oh, okay. And then 2001, it came back again, and we were like, this is weird. We just kept praying, and we didn't really tell anybody, but our interns kind of prophetically said, hey, we believe God's called you to plant a church. I'm like, Kim, did you say anything? She's like, no, did you say anything? I was like, I didn't say anything. How would they even know that that's on our heart and that God's doing this? And we were still out in California in the Bay Area. And then in 2002, 2, I went to our elders. I said, we're supposed to leave and plant a church. And they said, no, stay. And if it's still there a year from now, bless it. We'll bless it. And they knew I was kind of an impulsive guy, and so they wanted to sift through that and pray through that, and we submitted to that. And I've shared that story before. I'm not going to go deep in it. But I remember 2003, that summer, God was like, it's time to go. And we're like, okay. And I remember how much spiritual growth happened in those moments as we trusted God. We sold furniture, sold our house, sold our cars, like gave stuff away, like, here we go, God, we don't know where. We were smart enough, and I use this facetiously, dumb enough, to say, God, we'll do it. We're in, just anywhere but Dallas, Fort Worth. And God rubbed our head and said, oh, that's cute, really cute. And so here we are in the geographical center of the Metroplex, because God doesn't let us run the show, which I'm thankful for. And then in the years preparing and praying and getting ready, those were hard years. But the summer of '09 was something really special for us because we had nothing. And one of the things that you had to do at the start, as you had to figure it out, was, well, what would you name it? If you're going to have a kid, like if you're going to have a baby, what do you name the baby? How are you going to do this? And so we had to kind of think through that. And I remember being out at Lake Quitman in, I think it was 2005, long before Bara, and God said, well, you love the first verb in the Bible, Genesis 1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And so I did a big research paper, not for college, just I was in grad school at the time, but just to really figure out what Barach, no vowels in Hebrew, what it really meant. And as I prayed through that, we thought, this is what God's calling us to do, and I'm thankful for it. I'm thankful for our name, and I'm going somewhere in this growth spurt thing. We're not just talking about our 15-year birthday or anniversary today, but when we got our logo designed, it was simplistic. It seemed fairly, cut and dried, but to a lot of people, it's very confusing. We would explain it like this is a blank canvas. It's an empty sheet of paper. It's the activity of God. It's the nothing. It's the alcoholic yet sober, the family in chaos that yet has to experience peace. It's the one far away from God yet to have been found by God. It's the thing that doesn't exist, but God is doing it. He's creating it. He's bringing it out of nothing. He's calling it. And I'm so thankful for that. I'm so thankful for that visual, that reminder, that the constant reminder that this church, Bara Church, is God's church, and it's God doing it. I saw some warning labels on actual consumer products, and I'm going to share a couple of them because they connect to where I'm going to make the point next. Is on a cardboard sun shield for a car, those sun shields you fold out, it said, do not drive with shield in place. So obviously someone had done that at some point because they had to put that on there. On a Batman costume, warning, cape does not enable user to fly. Don't know who's jumping off a roof and figuring that one out, but someone apparently did. On a portable stroller, caution. Jen, you're a new grandma. Remember this? Caution, remove infant before folding for storage. That was on the warning label there. On a bottle of hair coloring, do not use as an ice cream topping. Legit label on a bottle of hair coloring, do not use as an ice cream topping. And I think that sometimes we have to have these really silly or, seemingly obvious food labels or labels of any kind to remind us of the realities that are there. Because sometimes we can think, well, maybe I could do this. And that reminds me and hopefully us that apart from God, we can do nothing. That we need God desperately. That if God's not the one doing it, it's not going to happen. And we're going to be in a story out of 2 Chronicles chapter 20 today of Jehoshaphat. And the story is one that is a reminder that we need God. That apart from God, we're in trouble. We can't make it. We're doomed. We're hopeless. It seems pessimistic or I don't know, kind of fear-mongering, but it's just the reality of it. Now, Jehoshaphat, he's the king of Judah, the fourth king of Judah. He reigns for about 25 years. He's a good king. He follows in his father's footsteps. He pursues religious reforms. He seeks God. He has some ill-advised alliances with some wrong people. His son gets into a deal with Ahab's kid, and that's not good, and the alliance has negative consequences. And he is a religious reformer. He's trying to purge Israel of idolatry. He relies on God's guidance, and he's a really good military leader, but he has an interesting military strategy we'll see in the story today. And again, he's faithful to God but flawed, and leads Israel, God's people at the time, into a time of peace and prosperity. And so we'll pick it up in verse 4 of this story of Jehoshaphat, and we'll just kind of jump around a little bit. We're not going to hit every verse, but it says, the people of Judah came together to seek help from the Lord. Indeed, they came from every town in Judah to seek him. Jen alluded to the value of the gathering. My hope and prayer and heart is that this would be that, like this here would be that we would come from Roanoke and Newark and Southlake and everywhere to seek the Lord indeed, like to seek him together. There's something about an admission that we need God. We look around and go, oh, you need God? Oh, I need God. We need God. We remind each other. Sometimes we're the reminder, sometimes the remindee, if that's such a word. Verse 5, then Jehoshaphat stood up in the assembly of Judah and Jerusalem at the temple of the Lord in the front of the new courtyard. And he said, Lord, the God of our ancestors, you are not the God who is in heaven? You rule over all the kingdoms of the nations. Power and might are in your hand, and no one can withstand you. Our God, did you not drive out the inhabitants of this land before your people Israel and give it forever to the descendants of Abraham, your friend? They have lived in it. They have built in it a sanctuary for your name, saying, if calamity comes upon us, whether the sword of judgment or plague or famine, we will stand in your presence before this temple that bears your name and cry out to you in distress. Then you will hear us and you will save us. Jump into 12, it says, our God, will you not judge them? For we have no power to face this vast army that is attacking us. We do not know what to do, but our eyes are on you. Now just stop there for a minute before we go to 13. Like, to admit that, to just say transparently and authentic, like, we don't know what to do. I don't know about you, but I find myself in seasons and times and moments and situations, I don't know what to do. But the phrase, but our eyes are on you, it's telling, it's truth, it's to be followed and lived and walked in. Like there's something about saying, hey, I don't know this, I don't know how this will go or what's this about or why this happened. This week, a guy that coached me and is a ministry just guru, a gift to the church, died suddenly of a heart attack, gardening his yard on Labor Day. Just a good man, so unexpected, super healthy, just leaves behind kids and a ministry, and it's a big thing. And a little baby, a little infant, I never met the infant, but was made aware of a stillborn baby. That's heavy and hard. Kim and I found out last night of one of our Young Life kids. Their husband died in an ATV accident. Brian Bradley's brother had a massive heart attack, but lived and is on the road to recovery and doing well. But just boom, 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 all these reminders of our finiteness, our mortality, our how short and precious life is. And sometimes we don't know what to do. But our eyes are on you. This is all the men of Judah with their wives and children and little ones stood there before the Lord. They're there going, all right, God, do something. And I don't know about you, but I know that I could tell as I got older when I was about to grow, because I would hurt. I would have growing pains. My knees would hurt. My shoulders would hurt. I would ache. I would feel, and I kind of got where I understood this is what's happening. I think for us sometimes we look at the pain and we go, this is pain, but maybe we could see it with a different perspective as, wait a minute, God's doing something, and we don't have to understand it, like it, agree with it, even, be giddy about it or anything, but our eyes can be on him, and we can trust that he's going to grow us through it, grow us in it, do something for us. Verse 14, then the Spirit of the Lord came on Jehaziel, son of Zechariah, the son of Benaniah, the son of Jeiel, the son of Mattaniah, a Levite, a descendant of Asaph, as he stood in the assembly. So now the Spirit comes on him, and he prophesies, and he says, listen, verse 15, listen, King Jehoshaphat, and all who live in Judah and Jerusalem, this is what the Lord says. Do not be afraid or discouraged because of this vast army, for the battle is not yours, but God's. I don't know how about you, but how many times a day or a week or a month or a season or a year, do I need to hear that reminder? Hey man, listen, don't be discouraged, don't be, afraid. I know what it looks like, I know what it feels like, I know what your process, but battle's God's. God's got this. And I'd be lying to you if I didn't confess that multiple times in deep, dark ways, as God has called Kim and I to lead and serve Bara, there's been seasons where I've been like, I don't know. And God's like, don't be afraid, don't be discouraged. Battle is not yours, but God's. So here's the plan that this guy gives. I mean, part of me is going, Jehaziel, is this really, why don't you let Jehoshaphat do this? He's the military guy, right? He says, tomorrow we'll march down against them. They will be climbing up by the pass of Ziz, and you will find them at the end of the gorge in the desert of Jeruel. Okay, that's it. You will not have to fight this battle. Take up your position, stand firm, and see the deliverance the Lord will give you, Judah and Jerusalem. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. Go out and face them tomorrow. The Lord will be with you. Jehoshaphat sends the worship team out to the front of the battle lines. And I said that correctly. He doesn't send the best fighters. He sends those that lead the praise for the community of Israel. Now, don't mistake our worship team, which I think would fare fairly well in a street brawl. I'm just being honest. Lisa and Jen they're spicy. I trust me. They can handle themselves. They can throw some beats. Philip, I wouldn't fight him with a pole. Steve, he looks tough. But a lot of churches' worship teams, if I'm being honest and kind of facetious and not being too crass, they're a little not tough. I'm just going to be honest. I mean, there's just something, you look at them and you're like, you guys could win a dance-off maybe, or a beauty pageant, but this is what Jehoshaphat does. He sends the worship team out first to praise. That's the ones that are going to do the fiercest fighting, because that's a declaration we need God. We're going to sing to God, trust God, acknowledge God, worship God, because we need God. And I like that phrase, you got to be able to withstand. You're going to be able to withstand. And I thought about this. I thought, you'll never withstand until you learn to stand with. For me, sometimes I go, I don't know if I can withstand it. I don't know if I can do it. I don't know if I can make it. And God's going, you can't, but if you would stand with me, walk with me, trust me. And as I think about this concept of growth spurt, our need for humility, our need for God, our need for trust, our need for dependence is the catalyst, is the thing, is the most important thing that we have. And as I mentioned just loosely, because I'm not a doctor, I don't want to go deep and show off my Google knowledge, but there are some factors that will tip off, or markers that will call into the process of a growth spurt. It's like when this happens and this happens and this happens, then growth will follow. And so literally your DNA tells your body, here's the growth plates and this is the limit, and the ligaments cannot keep expanding. And so that's how tall you get to be. It's already marked down. And so when we think about growth spurts, spiritual growth spurt markers, prayer and fasting, which we're not going to unpack 2 Chronicles 20 super deep, or exegete every verse, but prayer and fasting is a part of it. Worship is a part of it. Humility, being spirit-led, letting the other prophet come in and go, hey, listen, and hearing from God through that person. Great faith is obviously a part of it. gratitude, and then tenacity, the ability to not give up, the ability to not be overwhelmed, the ability to stand firm. As we look at that list, and we think, man, am I growing in my relationship with God? Am I growing in my leadership of my family or in the execution or stewardship of my finances? Am I growing in obedience in the way I steward my body or the way I steward my mind? Am I making progress? Can you put a line and go, well, this is me 2 years ago, and this is how I approached things or thought or acted or how selfless I was or how sinful? Like, if you put a mark there, are we growing? And a lot of times we want to grow. It's not a desire issue. It's not like I don't want to grow. It's like I want to be the same. I want to be average or just, apathetic or common. Like, that's not it. But if you just focus on the output, you just grow. It's like, yelling at a seed, grow. Like, what if we looked at the inputs? What if we looked at the markers and the things that came into, that have to be present before growth, and we focused on that? Am I growing in my practice of prayer? Do I pray more? Do I pray with a different trust? Do I pray a pure prayer? Is it always about the neighbor's cat with, a tumor, or is it something deeper and more meaningful? Is it consistent? Like, do I fast? Do I show God my dependence on Him by not eating and using that time in those hunger pains to remind me how much I need God? Like, am I fasting? They go hand in hand in the Bible. This is not a sermon on prayer and fasting, but all of these things contribute to growth. Worship. Like, do I sing or do I worship? Do I declare God's perfection and beauty, or do I sing the song on the screen? Do I sing outside of here? Do I worship in praise? And again, we'll get in week 5, it's all about worship, and we'll talk about how our whole life is an act of worship. We don't have to just be here on a Sunday and singing a song for it to be worship, but specifically, they worship God. They went into it singing and declaring and praising God. We have an attitude of humility, an attitude that says, oh, God, I need you. This morning, for whatever reason, the Lord led me to that song, I need you. Oh, I need you. Every hour I need you. And it was on repeat. I just kept saying it. God, I need you. I need you. Being Spirit-led. Again, we could get into Colossians and Galatians and look at the power of the Spirit and how much we need it. And so even Jehoshaphat's willingness to listen to the prophet and receive was an act of being Spirit-led. Is my faith growing? Like, do I trust God more? Do I learn? Am I trusting Him more? And again, this is not a giving sermon, but that's an area that the Bible talks a lot about. Like, can we trust God in our finances? Can we let go? Can we live with less? Can we practice? We just came through a series about simplicity and things like that. Can I trust Him that I can get done what I need to get done in 6 days and not 7, all these things? How about my gratitude? Am I entitled? Am I needy? Am I whiny? Am I selfish? Am I gimme? Or am I, who could I bless and what could I do and how could I grow and help? And then tenacity. Like, when do you tap? When do you stop? When do you say I can't? When do you just forget it and you let go of what God's called you to? It's small example, but maybe it'll connect. Went to a baseball game on Friday with a friend of mine, Jack, and picked him up. We got on the road and headed down to the Ranger game. At one point, we're going through a neighborhood. He said, I've never gone this way. I said, me neither. He said, how'd you know to go? I said, I didn't. He said, then how'd we get here? And I said, well, that's what the GPS said to do. So it said, do you want to avoid standstill traffic? That's an easy one for me. Yeah. Click yeah, right there. And that's why we're in this neighborhood. He's like, this is great. And we got through the game without standstill traffic and made great time. On the way back, he said, do you want me to punch in the direction? I go, oh, I know how to get home. I got this. And next thing you know, we're lost. We're going the wrong way. It's because I didn't listen to the GPS. I thought I knew. And when I think about the concept of growth spurt, like, if we would listen to God with a hunger and a reliance and a tenacity and a humility that just says, God, I need you, I need you, I need you. Don't be surprised if things don't change, grow, improve. We see it in the book of Acts. This The whole series comes from Acts. This is the first part of it. You know, they sat under the teaching in the Word, and they were obedient to that. And then the byproduct of that obedience we see in Acts 2 is, and the Lord added to their number daily those who are being saved. I know. We look around, we'd love to see some adding of the number. But maybe God's saying, we're going to go through some growing pains because we got to get prayer and fasting down, or we got to get worship better. We got to understand humility. We want to be Spirit-led. There's still a little bit of, I know the way, or I'll figure it out, or trust me on this, as opposed to listening and submitting. But we see it in Acts, and then Paul, when he's writing to the church in Corinth, I love what he says. This is Paul. Paul writes 2/3 of the New Testament. I mean, he is one of the most influential people in the whole Bible, if not the New Testament. And he acknowledges, he admits, I planted the seed. That's just what I did. But Apollos watered it. Now you can plant a seed, and you can water a seed. But the reality from this text and throughout all the meta-narrative of Scripture is that God causes the growth. But God made it grow. And I don't understand how, when I was 12, I stayed close to the same height, and I kept eating, and I kept doing sports, and I kept doing what I did. But somehow when I turned 13, it was like things changed. Or when I was 13 to 15, it was kind of like the same. And then 15 shot up a little bit. And then 18 shot up a lot. Like, I don't know how or why God makes things grow. But I know that without Him, we're not going to grow. Personally, corporately, spiritually, for sure. And as I think about this message, I always think, like, God, what does it mean outside of me in this message? Like, how does it become, like, if we didn't have the sermon, what would we have? And obviously we see in nature and creation the dependence that exists between a child and a parent, and we understand those connections, but I thought about communion. I thought about what we're about to do and how we have this opportunity. And communion is at its core a declaration of dependence. We are literally acknowledging, God, we can't save ourselves. We didn't save ourselves, for those of us saved, and we cannot sanctify ourselves. We cannot change ourselves. We can't grow ourselves. We can do our part in these things and have these markers and these efforts, but at the end of the day, the perfect work that Jesus accomplished on the cross is what we need. That's the thing that we need Jesus. We need God. It's the reminder of our logo. Without God, we can't. Like, it's God is going to make things grow. Or say in another way, God gives the growth. It's God. He's the one that does it. I don't know why some people stop growing here or start growing here, or why these people are this height or that. Like, it's programmed. It's up to God. But if we could be dependent upon God, I mean truly dependent, like GPS dependent. Like I knew how to get there, but I just plugged it in because maybe I need to take a different way. Maybe I need to listen. Maybe I need to experience something. And sure enough, it worked there, but I felt like I knew how to get back, and I didn't. If I could leave you with one thing today, it would be that your dependence determines your development. If you're stunted, if you're stagnant, if you're not growing in your faith, in your relationship with God, in your commitment to the kingdom and the cause and the church and the mission, if you're stuck, maybe it's your dependence that's undermining your development, or lack thereof. Your dependence determines your development. And so when I say as a subtitle, it's time to grow, it's prophetic, and I believe we're going to see it in our own stories, in our own lives, in our own relationships, in our own faith, and collectively as a church. I believe that. But really, it's about a commitment to prayer and fasting and worship and humility and being Spirit-led and having strong faith and living a life of gratitude and connection to that anything good comes from God, and we need God for everything great and good, and that our tenacity is just following Jesus, who he didn't want to go to the cross. He didn't He didn't have that. He said, if you could take this cup from me, but he stuck with it. There was a resolve. And I think about our story as a church 15 years ago. There have been times that I've wondered, what is God up to? And God said, you know what you need to do? You need to pray. You need to fast. You need to worship me. You need to stay humble. Don't try to figure it out. This battle belongs to me. You be Spirit-led. You listen for me in everything else and everywhere else and in the Word. And look at your own faith. And do you even trust me? Are you going to try to do it yourself? Are you going to try to figure this out? Are you going to trust me? And we be grateful for everything you've got. Even if I haven't given you more right away. Don't give up. And maybe that word that he has said to us many a times will be the word that you need to hear today. Let's pray. Father, as we commune, as we take this bread, as we remember your sacrifice for us, as we drink this juice, as we remember your forgiveness that is ours, as we commune, we declare, we need you. And if any of us, or all of us, are going to become and grow into the people, the Christ followers, and the church that you have called us to be, we need you. We need you to do it, to bara, to create in us a hunger and a thirst for your word, a hunger and a thirst for prayer, a hunger and a thirst for worship, a hunger and a thirst for an attitude of surrender and humility and obedience. And I just pray, Father, we would remember the battle is not ours. We would follow the advice of Jehoshaphat, and we would worship our way to victory. We would trust our way to triumph. We would be dependent upon you every step. We need you. And we thank you that you love us. You love us when we go the right way and when we think we know and we go the wrong way. You love us when we trust you and when we forget you. You love us. I thank you for that, Father. I thank you for 15 years of ministry and your faithfulness and just beauty. And we look forward to what you have for us. Father, sometimes we don't know what to do, but let us fix our eyes on you. It's through Jesus that I ask it, for a church that I love. Amen.